So I guess you've never completed State of Decay 2's lethal difficulty. Well, I've done that once or twice, so let me tell you exactly how. And if any of the advice in this video does help you out, it would be great if you could let me know with a like rating. Your first choice is arguably the most important. Which map do you choose? The best map will always be the map you know the best, but for the sake of the video, we'll be playing on Providence Ridge. Probably my favourite map. And to make things better, the starter base has a built-in infirmary, so we'll be spending less time looting later. On to character selection. You'll likely find it much easier using your legacy pool characters, especially if they're already loaded with rare loot from your previous playthroughs. If you're on PC, you could also use mods such as the Red Talon starters, so your starting characters will be more overpowered than the usual selection, but we're not going to be using mods. We'll be doing basic vanilla lethal zone. I'd also suggest not moving an already established community straight into lethal zone. The reason for that is freak spawns are set to your community standing, meaning if you have a community with an already maxed out standing, you're gonna experience the most lethal of lethal zones. See this example for reference. No, don't die, don't die, Bateman! Oh, for crying out loud! Can I get an RIP Bateman in the comment section? There are about 1400 traits in the game, so going through them all isn't really practical. But you can check them all out on the wiki, which has an in-depth description of them all. I'll leave a link in the description. But the main thing to know, if you manage to get a Blood Plague Survivor, keep them, hold on to them, they're insanely rare. But ultimately, the main things you should be aiming for on your starting characters is a mechanic 5th skill, some kind of infection resistant trait, such as carries hand sanitizer or drinks cold medicine, or even an incredible immune system. And any trait that gives you additional stamina is always handy. Remember, stamina is king. And of course, any 5th skills of computers, chemistry or medicine will usually do you very well. For example, having computers will allow you to upgrade the command center and allow you to get an additional outpost. Chemistry will allow you to craft energy drinks in kitchens, and stamina is literally the most important thing when out in the field. And with a medicine 5th skill, it can be upgraded to pathology, which will reduce the cost of plague cures and unlock infection reduction actions at infirmaries. These are the 3 characters I'll be starting with. Sadly, I couldn't get anyone with an infection resistant trait, but I did manage to roll a Lichenology 5th skill, which is incredible as it gives us a daily resource of 2 medical supplies, as well as the knowledge of gardening and herbalism. I also wanted to make sure I had a Warlord and Builder leader types, as the Builder legacy is what we'll be completing first, and you'll see why I wanted a Warlord soon enough. Surprisingly, it has nothing to do with my first for human sacrifice. On to the early game. Be careful claiming your starter base, as there's often a blood feral floating about nearby, and if you're new to lethal zone, you're going to want to avoid these crackhead little fiends for as long as humanly possible. You should be okay to avoid them once you claim the base, as they tend not to spawn too often while your community standing is still low, but after you've taken down several plague carts, they'll start spawning every time you take down a phase. But while we're here, let's assume you've accidentally alerted one, so we should cover how to take down these crackhead little bastards. The AI isn't too great at dealing with the higher difficulties, but with your other 2 community members at your side, you should be okay to batter him together. Just make sure to dodge him whenever he's near you, and you kind of need to hope and pray that he doesn't take down your mates. But how about some other ways to deal with them? My personal favourite is to abuse other enclaves. They've usually got guns, so leading the ferals towards them should take the heat off you, and you get to save ammo that way. Win-win. You also have the gunslinger method. Once you've maxed out your shooting skill, I'll always recommend gunslinger, as you'll be able to snap aim onto the ferals' heads, and as it takes 3 hits to take them down, it's definitely needed, especially if you play with a controller like I do. Just make sure to not spray and pay, as after each shot they're temporarily invincible. Gotta count it down. 1, 2, 3. Vehicles are also a great way of dealing with the crackheads. The Impaler, for example, can be called in from the radio for 1000 influence. It says the Ultimate Edition, but I didn't buy the Ultimate Edition, so I just assume everybody's got access to it. Ferals have no spatial awareness when it comes to this vehicle, and will just run into its spiky arse, ending their lives. And if you're not driving, you can also climb on and just crouch down, and let them take care of themselves that way. But you don't necessarily need the Impaler. The starter car also does a very good job. You'll need to be driving, but with the feral chasing you, slow down just enough so he can jump on your back end. Be careful not to allow him near your drive side door or engine, as that will usually go badly. Then with the feral clinging onto your back end like a stubborn hemorrhoid, he can't do any damage that isn't cosmetic, so you just need to slam your back end into a solid object, and good night crackhead. You can also reverse J-turn like so, but I wouldn't recommend to do that with a pickup, as there's a glitch that always catches me out. No, not again! Why have you done that? Flashbangs are also great, as they'll stun them and allow you for an easy kill. You can also drop kick ferals to stun them if your cardio specialization is powerhouse and you're not carrying a heavy weapon, but don't do that if you've got 3 chasing you, as the other 2 will just simply disembowel you before you even get a chance to get off the floor. Anyway, back to the early game. With base claimed, next up you should decide on your curveball settings. And with update 37, you can now adjust the frequency of your curveballs and how they affect your game. If this is your first time playing lethal, don't be afraid to turn them to continually positive with the strongest effects. At the end of the day, you're the one playing the game. Don't let someone else tell you how you should or shouldn't play. As long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. Now let's get back to me telling you exactly how to play the game. First thing you're going to want to do is get your car up and running, and thankfully on Providence you're only 150 meters away from a petrol station, or gas station if you're American. At the moment you'll only need a gas can to get the car working, but it's always worth checking out the trunks of abandoned vehicles nearby, as they occasionally have toolkits in, or in this case a heavy weapon that'll definitely be needed when we start taking on playcards. They can also be found in sheds and garages, as well as traded with enclaves once they start to spawn in. If you find yourself searching loud and quick like me, you'll often find yourself in a fight. Always remember the B button is your best friend and will still work when your stamina is empty, but try to always carry stamina items on you just in case. But with a can of gas collected, you can then get your car up and running, and the next thing you'll want to do is scavenge the local area for all of its building materials. You'll be able to find building materials here, 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 and here, as well as chemicals right by here. You'll also find a fuel resource here, which is especially handy if you make as many mollies as I do. You'll need 5 chemicals and 15 building materials to upgrade the infirmary to level 2, and from there your characters will be able to heal passively while not in use. You'll also be able to check in an additional person to sort out a partial infection. But what happens if you contract blood plague before collecting any samples to craft a cure? Like hitting a bloater, for example. That was definitely on purpose and not because I was chatting to Twitch chat, which is linked in the description. Firstly, this isn't the way to survive a bloater attack. I'll cover that in a little bit. It's important to remember, even though you have a countdown, checking that character into the infirmary will freeze that timer indefinitely, even if it does say less than a minute. There's no need to put them down unless you're feeling especially psychotic.
You won't feel a thing. At least it'll be over.
Poor Logan. With your infirmary being upgraded to level 2, you should still have enough materials to build our second facility, a workshop. Sadly, I don't have the labour for that, as we're currently a man down, who's slowly starting to daydream about feasting on his fellow men. So in the meantime, I head off in search of a gun. It's not too important as we don't actually need one, but I'd rather see it and not need it than need it and not see it. So I make my way to this part of the map to investigate the Ranger's tool shed. Make sure to check out any sheds that have these deer antlers above the door, as they'll always have some valuable weaponry inside. Although in this case I also found about 5 zombies. Christ's sake, I haven't had my personal space invaded this much since my last Ryanair flight. I find a rifle and a crossbow, but we don't use crossbows on this channel. Crossbows are for pussies or Daryl Dixon, and seeing as we're neither, it's not going to get used. I still make sure to take it though, as when the workshop is built I can either melt it down for scrap or sell it to the highest bidder. But the most important thing I find in the tool shed is actually a rifle ammo press. These ammo presses are fairly common in these kinds of tool sheds, so always check them out. While you might get more bang for your buck by sorting ammo from the storage, you'll actually get to choose what ammo you craft when one of these are installed to your workshop. There's also a military checkpoint just down the road that's another good source for guns. I found flash grenades, a scoped model 92 rifle, and an ammo resource. And just further down the road is a power station, which is a great place for finding scraps of circuitry which will be needed to upgrade your workshop to level 2. It's also a fairly reliable place to find toolkits. The cell tower next door is also very handy to learn the computer skill, and with it claimed as an outpost, you can use outpost defenses to prevent playcards from waking up. It costs 60 parts, but if you don't like dealing with infestations and sieges, that's definitely the way to go. Personally, I've never actually used this feature, as I like to have the threat of an infestation or siege, but it'll certainly be useful to newer players. Once you've built your first facility, which I recommend to be a workshop so you can fix your weapons, and put you on a path to a workshop level 2 where you'll be able to craft molotovs and toolkits, you'll get a mission pop up where people are asking for play examples, and it's always worth getting done as you'll get influence and the enclave will go from neutral to friendly. Personally, this is when I start to attack playcards. Killing a heart will grant you play examples, although you could go in silently and stealthily, but that's really not my style. After buying 2 molotovs off that enclave, this is my loadout going into the first fight against the playcards. A heavy weapon is a must, and I'll be honest, it doesn't really matter which one. Like I said earlier, make sure to search the trunks of abandoned vehicles, as well as sheds, garages, etc. The higher the impact stat, the better. Even this enclave had one for sale. Next up is our primary weapon, which at this point in the game will be whatever we have ammo for. I also make sure to bring some kind of medical supply as well as stamina relief, and literally every single explosive I've managed to scrape together so far. Remember, if you need a Molotov in an emergency, you can always break open a fuel rucksack, although this is expensive, so only use this in an emergency. I'd also usually go in with a plague cure or two, but seeing as we haven't got any, we're gonna have to go in raw and unprotected. Probably the same reason most of us are alive today. The first plague cart in Providence is almost always in the same spot, and I make sure to park up like so. There you go, just like that. So nothing can grab onto the bonnet if we need to escape quickly. For the first phase, I'd recommend getting it sorted with a heavy weapon. It should take between 6 and 8 hits to complete, but if you get overwhelmed, make sure to retreat to a high ground, ideally far enough away from the heart to draw the undead away from it. Once the phase has been completed, make sure to get out of the way of the incoming gas cloud, and this is where I drop my molly or explosive. Whilst also doing additional damage to the plague cart, it'll also burn up anything in that room, which should make things a little bit easier for us later. And also don't forget to climb on cars if you need to regain your stamina. Zombies can't climb onto cars, but you will have to look out for bloaters and juggernauts. For some reason, ferals can climb on the abandoned buses and the occasional shipping container, but that can still be a good way of separating yourself from the horde below. Maybe don't do this if you've got a triple pack though, but you shouldn't have to worry about them for quite some time. The second phase shouldn't take as long if you were successful with the molly, and you should be able to complete it before the hordes catch up to you. Alternatively, of course, you could always stand on the roof of the car and shoot it from distance, providing you've got the ammo of course, or maybe even a frag grenade. Then with the heart dead, you're definitely going to want to loot it for its guns, samples, explosives, stamina items. They can all be found in the Decay and Husk, and they're seriously useful, especially in the early game, but you'll likely have to lure the hordes away in order to get its loot. Seriously, don't bother fighting, it'll just cost more resources than you'll gain. Gotta drive away to allow the hordes to wander off on their own? Do it. But when you come back, make sure to collect all the plague samples on the floor, as they're especially useful in the early game, whether it's crafting cures or using infection therapy to remove partial infection. In this instance, I did make sure to craft a cure and give it to my already infected survivor, as let's be honest, you gotta look after your own community before you sort out some strangers. I then chuck a load of items I have no intention of using in my back pocket, and once the samples have been given to the enclave, with them friendly, you'll be able to sell the items for a higher price. I like to take the opportunity to check out everybody's skills, as eventually these guys will ask for a resource, which will make the enclave allied, and I'll be able to recruit one of them without spending any influence. At the moment, it would cost 750 influence to recruit one, and I can definitely think of better ways to spend that kind of money. Like for example, claiming outposts, which will be very useful in gaining daily resources. I tend to pop plague cures like the paracetamol, so having a medical outpost is always a necessity. I know a lot of people panic about food, as you always consume a lot more food in lethal difficulty than the others, but I've never really struggled with food, as there will always be enough in the local area to avoid starvation for the first few days. Remember, a day and night cycle is nearly 2 hours of game time, more than enough time to scavenge if you need to. Next up, you're going to want to aim for an extra 30 building materials to upgrade the command center and the workshop. Assuming you've already scavenged the entire area, you can find more with the radio, trading with the enclaves, or claiming a building material outpost. Although personally I wouldn't recommend claiming an outpost, as it takes ages to gain any sort of materials, as you'll only be getting one a day, unless of course it's upgraded, but to upgrade it you can need 800 influence and another 5 building materials just to do that. While you're getting that sorted, allow me to tell you why I also wanted a Warlord leader trait. One of their first quest lines will be to travel to an enclave to discuss their weapon hoarding, and for once I'm going to ask you to control yourselves and not go for the instant murder spree. Yes, you'll get their guns for free, but ignoring the fact hostiles this early on will likely wipe you out, you're better off actually trading with them. Reason number 1, you now have a reliable weapons trader selling some of the most powerful weapons in the game, admittedly for high prices, but at this point in the game I had myself 1,000 influence and I thought it would be worthwhile to spend it accordingly. I got myself a 50 cal sniper with spare ammo and a 50 mag M4. Remember, you'll get 200 of that influence back just by completing the mission. But the main reason you'll want to keep these guys alive is you can guarantee a kick-ass survivor. I got this guy with massive health and stamina, as well as 3 maxed out skills and a useful 5th skill. Obviously I can't recruit him at the moment, but when they start asking for help, I can make them friendly or allied, and that way I'll be able to recruit him for either cheap or on the free. And as little as 15 to 20 minutes later, I get that mission. Just some simple ammo supplies. And just like that, we get to soften the hearts of these stone cold killers. Apocalypse friends! And while we're waiting for any more missions to spawn, it's time to show you exactly how good that 50 cal we just bought is. So far, we've only taken down one player card that luckily was nowhere near any others, and that prevents infestations and sieges from forming. And we're about to do exactly the same with our second heart. It's isolated, so its death won't wake any other player cards, and sensing it's quiet, I decided to take down the first phase with my heavy weapon. That was a terrible decision, I'm sure you'll agree. But my stubborn ass manages to break through, completing the phase, and also burning it alive. And with just 6 shots later from the roof of the Impaler, we get the win. What can I say, 50 cals are simply incredible. Expensive, but incredible. That's 2 of the 30 play cards taken down, and while we won't be covering every single heart, we'll have more information on play cards later in the video. While we wait for one of the 2 enclaves we've met so far to become allied, I accept a mission to find Eagle Eye's rifle. It's a great source of influence and will eventually lead to a second 50 cal that can be equipped on a community member back at base that will help to keep threats at bay without spending any ammo. But first I decided to check out the Wandering Trader, and it's a good thing I did as they were selling a signal antenna. Very useful as we'll be able to install it to a command center to get an extra outpost, although the command center will need to be upgraded once before you can install facility mods to it. Now back to tracking down Eagle Eye. Now to be fair, this could be quite risky as we are going quite deep into plague territory, and if you're not too confident, maybe it might be for the best to stick around the non-plague territory to continue looting. There's no such thing as having too much loot. But the first mission is actually pretty simple. It's effectively rock up to a place and kill a zombie or 2, then search some containers until you find some 50 cal ammo. Piece of piss. And while I was over this way, I decided to take down another play card as I was thinking about claiming a base nearby. I never did, so to be honest it was quite foolish as I would have almost certainly awoken another play card, which means infestation and sieges will now start to form, so maybe don't copy me on every decision. But once you get good at killing play cards, it's actually a really good way of gaining resources. Just tends to be a bit random on what you can and can't get. Next up, I accept a mission to meet up with a stranger. These are often worth doing as they can lead to recruitment opportunities, although in this case it was just a simple drop-off mission, but at least we got some food supplies out of it. And as they leave the map, I can safely loot their former home to get even more building materials. Finally, the original enclave that spawned has asked for our assistance, and once I've given them the supplies they've asked for, they become allied, and I can get my pick of the litter. Welcome to the team Susie. I chose Susie for her 5th skill of utilities, which can be used to build a hydroponics back at base for a lot of food supplies, but you'll need power and water first. But we also got lucky with Susie as she had an incredible immune system, which makes up for the fact she's as observant as a Trump supporter. With 4 survivors, I'm now going to start looking at moving bases. And in Providence, you have 2 options, Rusty Rosie's or the Western Building Supply. They both cost 1,000 influence and require 4 community members, and usually I prefer the Western Building Supply as it has a lot more options with the slots. But on this occasion, I decided to go with Rusty Rosie's as it was already out of plague territory. The Western Builder Supply will usually have 2 or 3 play cards you need to take down in order to claim it, and to be fair, Rusty Rosie's usually has at least 1. I guess I was just very lucky. Both bases have a failed Clio supply drop that is worth breaking open, granting you plenty of supplies if you manage it. However, you'll need 7 survivors or an upgraded computer skill to program in as well as power. Just another reason why I made sure to start with a computer expert. To upgrade your computing skill, you're going to want to use the facility actions in the command center, such as hacking drones or friendly broadcast. It'll take a little while gathering all the supplies, but this is possibly the best base you can build in a mid-game base. An auto shop the base comes with allows you to craft cheaper toolkits, a generator but only to be used when you actually need power as it costs 4 fuel supplies each time, but it does last for an hour. A farm in the large slot makes food and can be changed to medicine if you need so, a level 2 infirmary and workshop to heal passively and to be able to craft molotovs, a shooting range for extra stamina as well as to be able to train your shooting skill without putting yourself in danger, built-in kitchen to craft energy drinks providing you have a chemist, and with an upgraded command center for our outposts we have meds, food, water and 2 fuel stations. Ideally you want these upgraded to the max, but that is expensive, so just upgrade as much as you can, focusing on what you need more than the others. Now let's talk about some other things that can assist you on your journey. Cannon fodder. When out and about in the world, you should keep an eye out for strangers that request your help. They'll usually want to live back home as they've been separated from their group, or perhaps they're looking for revenge on a hostile enclave. As previously mentioned, these can often lead to new recruits or fight Failing that, you can agree to help them, let them follow you, and just lead them into Plague Zone and act as a distraction for the undead while you focus on the plague cards. Or alternatively, you could temporarily recruit an Enclave member for 100 influence. That's pretty cheap. Plus you'll have a little portable trader to flog all the shit you don't need to. But I wouldn't recommend recruiting your own members as the AI isn't great and they'll end up being destroyed by a feral or a juggernaut. Speaking of juggernauts, these behemoths are often looked at as a massive problem, and from the outside you'd be correct, but honestly the best way of dealing with them is to simply ignore them. They're always massive bullet sponges, and using melee weapons just puts you at risk of the other undead that are attracted by the noise of the beast's call. You can outrun them and they can't get into buildings. Just make sure to park your car far away from them, as they have a bigger hatred for the motor vehicle than just stop oil. But for argument's sake, let's say a juggernaut has found its way into your base. How do you deal with it? Well, that's exactly why I recommended earlier getting yourself a 50 cal, equipping it to a community member, and allow them to blast as much as possible without costing you any ammo. But if you don't have a 50 cal, any high caliber rounds with your community members all firing at him shouldn't take too long to deal with. Explosives also work, but you gotta be careful with them, as you don't want to harm your teammates. And certainly don't equip anybody with grenade launchers, as that would not go well at all. Oh my god! Ideally, if you have to take him out, you want to take him out before he gets to your base, and you can just use a vehicle for that. By hitting him with the back end of your car, you'll hurt him without risking your engine, although this does take a while and you'll need to be very wary of the other zombies. Mainly, bloaters. As we've already seen, bloaters can be a problem. It's important to remember you don't want to slow down to get out of the vehicle. Instead, foot down and press and hold Y while the car blasts off, taking the cloud away with it. These bastards are literally the reason I always carry multiple cures in Lethal Zone. It's a bit niche, but if you can get a bloater to pop next to a heart, drop an incendiary and it should end the play card immediately. And as their toxic cloud is also very flammable, they can be very useful for dealing with hordes. Next up, hostile enclaves. Hostiles on Lethal Zone are almost certainly the biggest danger. A single shot can down you, and if multiple get you pinned, you're almost certainly screwed. Similarly to juggernauts, it's best to avoid them unless you absolutely need to deal with them. The best way to take out humans is to break the Geneva Convention. No, seriously, bloater gas and gas launchers are so OP, it kinda trivializes them. But you're gonna need the advanced biochem station in order to craft them, and seeing as that's rare, my favourite way is to lead either a juggernaut or a feral there to do the hard work for me. Triple packs are especially good at this. Just make sure you're in a safe space, as you don't want to be confused as the human sacrifice. Failing that, a 50 cal to the face should do the job nicely. The rest of the play cards. At this point you've probably learned how to deal with play cards pretty effectively with heavy weapons and explosives, etc. But I think it's worth covering some extra cheesy strategies while we're at it. If you get a heart in a barn like this, you'll be able to block its only entrance with a vehicle and take down the heart without any issues. Just be careful trying to escape, especially if you have the Bangonomics Curveball active. No! But the ultimate cheesy way is to use the zombie glitch. Again, you'll need the biochem station in order to craft it. Notice I didn't mention using that on the hostiles? That's because it's a waste on those walking meat sacks. If you hit a heart with a zombie, then shoot it, it'll cause a damage multiplier glitch which results in the death of the play card. It's better used with a higher caliber weapon, but can also work with smaller weaponry, it just takes a little longer. Legacy missions. Once you've taken down all the play cards, you'll want to complete a leadership legacy. And if it's your first time in Lethal, it's always worth completing the builder legacy first. It's probably the easiest, as most of the missions are pretty simple. It's like getting power to your base or building a sniper tower. The finale on the other hand can be quite difficult, but I wouldn't say it's harder than any of the others. The final mission will result in people turning up at your base looking for refuge, and you can use this to maximise your community members to the hard cap of 13. But if I'm being honest, most of them aren't worth the hassle, as they're just basic survivors. Once you're forced to turn people away because you're too full, eventually baddies will arrive at base demanding you leave, and you'll have to fight them off. But at this point you'll be able to deal with them pretty effectively, and the following siege that results from all of the noise. And just like that, you have now completed State of Decay 2 Lethal difficulty for the very first time, whilst unlocking the builder boon in the process. You can use this on any future communities you start, and you'll be able to have water and power from the get-go. Thank you so much for watching. I'll do my best to answer any questions you have in the comment section, and if there's any veterans watching who think I've missed something, feel free to let me know there as well. Feel free to check out any of my other content that's listed on screen now, and I'll see you in the next one.